What is happening, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today we have ourselves the BlitzWolf mechanical keyboard. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so what we got here is another mechanical keyboard from BlitzWolf. Their last keyboard was released a couple years ago. It was a wireless keyboard, 60%, and it was actually a pretty decent deal. In fact, I believe it was actually cheaper than this one here. That being said, that one actually has been discontinued, and around the last few months they were selling some kind of different model with different software. That was all sorted out, and I went ahead and actually saved the software for the old and new and uploaded it to my G drive just in case. That being said, this time they came out with this one. It is no longer wireless. However, the cable here is detachable, and yes, it is USB Type-C. Now you'll notice there's some routing points on both sides here, and you can't really use those since the cable here just cannot handle that. It's going to be significantly kinked and probably break it. So if you want to route it somewhere else, I guess we'd use another cable. That doesn't have a long neck here. Now in the pictures and the photos, it does show that there's a cover here, but it's not included in this package. Maybe they forgot, maybe they never intended to include it. We got a bunch of rubber feet, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, with 2 different height adjustments, which is pretty nice. Typing it with the kickstand on, it actually feels pretty good, and typing on it is a pretty alright experience. So what we got here are actually Gatoron Reds, and these are opti-mechanical switches. And although the feel is actually very similar, the way they work is very different. Instead of 2 metal pieces contacting each other, we have actually a laser and a sensor. And basically the laser shoots out. Whether the laser signal is obstructed or not, it will go ahead and register a keystroke. And the current benefit of these is that they're very easy to hot swap. And basically we have a whole lot of nothing inside the keys themselves other than just a spring. You can easily take that out and swap it out for a different key if you'd like. So this keyboard is currently being sold for around $75 US. It is a bit on the higher end side, but it's probably because of the opti-mechanical switches. And currently you can get the KB2 with 4 different flavors: blue, green, yellow, and red. And again, these are Gatoron switches, so they are pretty decent. And as for what you get in the box, well, you get the manual, the keyboard, as well as these 2 tools, which is the keycap puller and the switch puller. And of course, this cable, which is pretty good, but again, if you want to use it at the routing points, you need to switch it out. It's nicely braided, it's pretty thick, and it should get the job done. As for the keys themselves, they're pretty good. Nothing really crazy, but they are double shot, and I believe they are PBT. Not the most premium keys out there, but they get the job done and feel pretty alright. So with that said, let's go ahead and see how this keyboard feels. In terms of functionality, I've used it for about 2 weeks, and it feels pretty good. There's no issues whatsoever. It's very responsive. And overall, I really had no issues other than how this keyboard overall feels. In terms of feels, it is a mechanical red. I kind of find them to be too light. I usually use browns or yellows, or sometimes blues. However, reds were never my favorite back then, especially when they were on Cherry MX switches early on. This one actually feels pretty decent, but the way it sounds is terrible. It doesn't sound the greatest, and one thing for sure is that we're going to go ahead and lube up this keyboard, as well as installing some padding. So back to the switches here real quick. For $75 US, you're mostly paying here for the optical switches. Now for the optical switches, as you have saw, they are very easy to switch out. The current downside is that you can only mostly get them in Gatoron flavors, so you're limited to Gatoron switches if you really want these optical switches. Now, is that a bad thing? Well, maybe not. They do feel slightly different than the normal mechanical switches from Gatoron, but overall, they feel pretty similar. But again, this keyboard does feel a bit on the cheaper side. The materials used here don't feel the greatest. It doesn't really flex, just the overall look of the materials. It's a fingerprint magnet. We do have a brushed aluminum on the front, but overall it just feels like a very hollow keyboard. Now in terms of weight, it does feel alright, but overall it weighs about 700 grams. But one last thing before we go ahead and take this thing apart and take a look at the insides and mod it up, let's go ahead and talk about the actual macros and lighting effects. So the lighting effects, well, you already know what you're gonna get, splashing back and forwards, rainbow, radial effects, as well as individual key lighting. As for quick shortcuts, we do have the media keys all the way on the top here, which are very useful. But when it comes to macros, you have 2 different ways. Well, right now you can only do it in one way. And that would be by doing it using the FN keys. So when you actually go ahead and press the FN key, it will actually turn off all the keys except the ones that you can actually interact with, which of course include the Windows key if you want to disable it during gaming, the lighting effects, and then we can go ahead and hit F12, which will show us 5 different keys that are lit up in the middle here, which are macro programmable. So for example, go ahead and press P, and then it will show you that everything is flashing. I can go ahead and type whatever I want, testing this keyboard, hold that again, and we are good to go. And the next time I want to recall that macro, I can go ahead and press FN and O. and that will type it out automatically. So that's how the macros work. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The manual is there if you need it. However, this keyboard was supposed to come with a piece of software, which currently, as of right now, does not work. I've tried to get in touch with them, and they have sent me a broken piece of software. The one on their website also does not work. And basically what happens, you go ahead and install it, and it gives you 5 different errors just all over your screen, which isn't fun. And I'm just going to hold it right there. So they have actually released the software literally 5 minutes after me publishing the video, which I've had ready for about a week now. And I've been waiting for the software to release, and they finally gave it to me. And what's more interesting than the software, which now works, and it's pretty nice, I'm going to show you in just a bit. According to Google Drive, the file here has actually been released back in March 2021. And later on in this video, I'll be taking the keyboard apart, and you'll see that the keyboard PCB was actually designed sometime late November 2020, which means this keyboard has been in development for probably over a year now. So yeah, I took down the video. Here I am revising it, showing you guys what the software looks like, and I'll be redoing the conclusion. So here it is. It looks like they're trying to go for some kind of Logitech G-Hub type of software where you could possibly control all your different BlitzWolf products. So that's the Home tab. You go ahead and click on the keyboard, and then it will bring you into the Device tab. Now in the Device tab, you have a couple things. We have the profiles, and you can have a ton of profiles, as you can see here, which is pretty cool. You can also export and import, as well as rename the profiles, have some favorites, set up some macros, remap some keys. For example, we could set up the pause key to say GG easy, just a little quick one. And whenever you're in game, you can just quickly press that and you'll have that going for you. We have disable, multimedia, key combination, and this is cool. We can even have it switch to a specific profile, which is very useful. So you can have multiple profiles and you can switch between them and whatnot. So very useful, lots of great stuff. And to go on further for the macro, we actually have this whole entire other tab where you can go ahead and really dial in your settings for your macros, which is really, really nice. It's got a ton of function, a ton of options, which is great to see. And lastly, we have the LED tab, and right here we can go ahead and set up your colors, and it has a nice animated preview, so very, very impressive. The image here is kind of warped. It's too stretched sideways, and there's a lot of empty space. And with the software, you can actually have it go on for full screen, so very useful. And yeah, it's just a really nice piece of software. Really just changed my opinion of this keyboard. We'll talk more about that at the end of this video. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to actually lubing this keyboard, padding it, and then move on to the conclusion. So the PCB looks pretty clean, pretty nice, and it's mounted directly to the aluminum piece. It's very shiny, kind of feels like there's some oil, but it's just some coating to keep it nice and protected. And we can see the actual model number right here, NP87IR RGB-V1.0. Alright, so here's the PCB, pretty straightforward. It is kind of warped, I don't know if you guys can see that, right about here. And we can just flex it back into place. Yeah, this is pretty much what you're paying for. Most of the price goes right in here. Optical switches all over this entire keyboard. And it's honestly a pretty cool PCB. It's very lightweight, very straightforward, and very simple. Well, we have the keyboard. We can go ahead and get started by actually padding the bottom of this keyboard and making it sound much cleaner. And we're back. So I went ahead and cleaned it up, made it work, made it fit, took out a bunch of that foam material, added some grease for the stabilizers, added some super lube for the actual keys, and here are the results. And just a heads up, this is not a best case scenario, basically done in the laziest way. Alright, so the conclusion, should you get this keyboard and is it worth $75 US? Well, to be honest, at first I didn't like it too much for a couple of reasons. At first, it didn't sound great. Second of all, the software didn't work. But once I started using it, after I lubed it up, after I patted it, and once the software started working, my opinion actually has slightly changed. First of all, it just sounds much better. It feels like a much nicer keyboard. It has a decent amount of weight and it feels really good to type on. The kickstand is just the perfect height, giving you a pretty great typing experience, and being gated on red switches, it makes it feel very, very responsive. So far I have had zero issues when it comes to gaming. It's a very responsive keyboard and it feels much better after lubing it. However, lubing it of course is not cheap, and if you're looking for a quick keyboard you can just buy and start using without having to do too much, well, this one might not be it. However, if you're into modifying, you can get yourself some super lube, some dielectric grease, and get this keyboard all set up with, of course, some padding. Now, for about $12 extra, you can get yourself the LK67 from Gamma-Key. This is the keyboard I reviewed about a month ago. It's pretty fantastic. It runs off Bluetooth, 2.4 GHz USB dongle, as well as a direct USB connection. It's very nice and compact. It also runs gated-RONs. The keycaps themselves are fantastic. The color scheme is pretty great. The software does work. It has a volume knob, proper dedicated arrow keys, delete key, all that good stuff. And again, this will cost you an extra $12 versus this one. And what we have here are actually gated-RON yellows, and I just absolutely love it in comparison to the KB2. So yeah, if you're a competitive gamer, I would say this is a good option, only if you're willing to go ahead and lube it. If you're not planning on lubing it, I might recommend getting gated-RON yellows instead. Yeah, I'm starting to like this keyboard, might actually start using it as a daily driver, and if I have any issues, I'll let you guys know in the comment section below. If you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone.